Hi pals, watch me destroy my nails. Okay, for real though, hi. Welcome to my living room. I am ripping price tags off of gifts for people. So that they don't see how much money I spent on them for Christmas. I overpromised myself the amount of chores and things I was gonna do today. So I am struggling right now trying to get everything done. So you get to hang out with me and we get to do my November wrap up while I wrap up my fucking Christmas presents. I'll save myself out. So yeah, today is kind of a day and we're just gonna get this started. So I'm gonna talk to you about all the books that I read in November. Yes, in November, while I wrap up some Christmas presents because I need to condense some things. So hang out with me. Okay, so let's quickly run through all the books that I read in November. I gave no rating to A Map is Only One Story. I gave 2 stars to Flowers of Mold by Ha Song-nan. 3 stars to Mind of My Mind by Octavia E. Butler. Revenge by Yoko Ogawa. Goliath by Tochi Onobuchi. Tiny Nightmares. Bad Vibes Only by Nora McInnery. Fire Punch Volume 1 by Tatsuki Fujimoto. The All-Consuming World by Cassandra Kah. Our Shadows Have Claws. Mirrored Heavens by Rebecca Roanhorse. I gave 4 stars to The Only Good Indians by Stephen Graham Jones. Yes, this is confusing because I also have another copy of this as a gift for someone I need to wrap today. Annihilation by Jeff Vandermeer. My Pen is the Wing of a Bird. Absolution by Jeff Vandermeer. And My Darling Dreadful Thing by Joanna Van Veen. I gave 5 stars to Latvona by Otessa Moshfegh. Parable of the Sower by Octavia E. Butler. Tender as a Flashbag, Stina Bass-Tarika. And 10 Minutes and 38 Seconds in the Strange World by Elif Shafik. Okay, so we're gonna start with, hopefully, me being a little less crazy. Me being able to be more I just ripped that wrapping paper. Productive in the video and the wrapping. And let's talk about my superlatives for the month. We're gonna start with my worst, and that just absolutely hands down has to go to Flowers of Mold. This is a short story collection, and I believe the author is Korean, and I think this was originally published in Korean. But I honestly really did not have a good time with this. I really thought that overall, I really had a hard time with the stories themselves. They were rather rambly, which sounds really mean, but it didn't feel like a cohesive story most of the time, and it didn't even feel like that's someone's music. I thought someone's coming up the stairs. It didn't feel like even like stream of consciousness. They just felt like really rough. They were difficult to read. They were difficult to keep track of like who was who and what was going on. And I was not having a good time with this. Anyways, I was really disappointed because this is a short story collection I've wanted to read for a while now, a couple of years actually. And I am very grateful that I got this through my library because I would have been so disappointed if I had purchased this or someone had purchased this for me, and I hated it as much as I did. Plus, also, there was just a bunch of like not a bunch, but there was a particularly transphobic story that I thought was honestly, up until it got transphobic, it was my favorite of the collection so far, and it's almost right in the middle of the thing. And it just caught me so off guard, the sudden, sudden plot beat that just felt really wrong. And I ended up talking to my spouse about it like one night where I was like, is this what I think it is? Am I being crazy? Am I not understanding the sensibilities of other people or cultures? And they helped confirm for me that no, in fact, it felt like that because it was that. That particular story really soured me on the rest of it, and I wasn't even enjoying it that much to begin with. So this just was the worst thing that I read this month. Moving on to my most disappointing, and I'm going to very, very sadly have to give this to Mind of My Mind by Octavia E. Butler. This has been my least favorite Butler that I have read so far. Consistently, I have really enjoyed her work. or at least like, think about Fledgling. Fledgling is just a difficult read. Fledgling is not bad, it is a difficult read and it is intended to be so. But this, I was really disappointed. This is the second book in the Patternist series. And I don't want to even say this had second book syndrome. I know there's something to do with the publication order of these books. And I really didn't like it. I didn't like it. This is a little rambly, but we're gonna deal with it. This felt like such a departure from the first book, which was absolutely buck wild. Let's be honest with each other right now. I can be honest with you, right? You can be honest with me. That was a buck wild book. And this felt like such a departure for a number of reasons. Number one, it was so much dialogue. It was constant dialogue. It really just went on and on and on and on with just pages and pages of talking. Pages and pages and pages of it. But there was just so much talking. It was constant chatter. Constant. And it was truly insufferable. I did this wrong. I'll fix it. I can fix it. It was constant chatter. It was constant just pages and pages and pages of dialogue, and it just felt like nothing was ever happening and people were just talking about it. And that's not the experience I usually have with Octavia Butler. I usually feel like she has such a good mix of like action and dialogue and explanation without being too much, right? But this was just, it was too much. It was constantly just too much. It really felt like nothing was ever happening, and more than nothing was ever happening, it was just boringly never happening. I really found the characters in here to be lacking as well. Like, as crazy as Wild Seed was, I was actually very interested in the characters and in Doro and what he was doing and what his goals were. I found him to be a very fascinating anti-hero. And in this book, what he was doing, there was so little of him or his plans. And Mary was just really, really insufferable to listen to. And again, I can't stress this enough. There was just so much constant dialogue. And from someone who like is just not a fun character to have to listen to the whole time, I really had a bad time with it. I really like just pushed through to the end as fast as I could at one point, and I genuinely considered DNFing this and not returning to the series because I hated it so much. Moving on to my most surprising, and I'm gonna give this to two different books this month, and one of them I have propped right here. Nice, like all nice and in the frame, kind of, sort of. There's this thing here you can't see it entirely, but who cares? And that is going to be Our Shadows Have Claws. This is an anthology. This is 15 Latin American monster stories, and honestly, I just really had a good time with this. I bought this initially just because I really love this cover, and I had been looking for it in my local bookstores, and I couldn't find it there, so I bought it at Book Outlet when I saw it was available. And I really quickly felt like I had made a mistake with this because I realized that this was more young adult stories rather than adult stories. And young adult horror and I don't always really mesh together that well. I can sometimes find it a little tedious, a little boring. It's very good for what it is. It just at this point in time doesn't work for me, unfortunately. So I really felt like I had made a mistake with this, and I was so pleasantly surprised. I had a lovely time with this. I really think that one of the things that this collection excels at is having a proper mix of like scary and creepy, but also very relevant stories. It's one of the things I love the most about horror is how it can just be a vessel for talking about more dynamic and more, not, I don't want to say important necessarily, but it's such a good vessel for like metaphor and for symbolism, right? And I think that this is such a good showcase of that particular trait. There's a lot going on in here. It's direct when the stories need to be. And I think that overall, all the authors did such a good job of really doing what they intended. There was only a couple of stories in here that I didn't super love. And honestly, for an anthology, that's pretty damn good. For them, I think this is probably one of my highest overall rated short story collections. This and another one that I read this past month, My Pen is the Wing of a Bird. These were just some of the best anthologies and short story collections I've read this year. They truly were. They did so much and they felt really well curated. One of the biggest reasons why I was so surprised at Our Shadows Have Claws is just because I had very low expectations for it, and this absolutely surpassed them. Moving on to my next most surprising read, and I am going to give this straight up to Lapvona by Otessa Moshfegh. If you've been here for a while, you know that I have a, I don't want to say checkered past, but I have a rather inconsistent past with Otessa Moshfegh's writing. Eileen, I absolutely abhorred. I thought it was a bad book and I didn't enjoy it one bit. And My Year of Rest and Relaxation, I honestly don't even, I forget a lot of times I read that this year, which is very surprising to my spouse in particular, because they remember the full conversation we had about this after I finished it, and I just don't. So I really felt like I was done with her books. Not like in a negative, like, oh, I'm done, I've had it kind of way, but really just in a like, I just don't think you're for me, I don't think I'm for you, and we can just leave it at that. We don't have to continue trying to pursue this sort of relationship together, right? And I really thought I was done and was just happily moving on. And then I think I had watched Books and Lala read this book, or someone else read this book, and I was like, you know what? This was honestly the Otessa Moshfegh I was the most interested in. I don't know why. This cover really does it for me. It's so good. It's just, I don't know. I'm really, really captivated with this cover. And so I grabbed it from my library and I listened to the entire thing in one evening, and 2 evenings? I listened to it very quickly and I laughed up every moment of it. Lapvona is a horror fantasy literary fiction, kind of. It's a very hard book to categorize in my opinion. This is the story following a young boy who is the son of the local sheep farmer in like a European medieval setting, essentially. I believe in the, I believe it's fictional village of Lapvona, and it is following him as, his life just starts to get a little strange, a little weird, and by a little strange and a little weird, I mean, he starts getting into some fuck shit, and then some fuck shit starts happening, and then there's some stuff with some eyeballs. It's a good time. I had a good time with it. One of the reasons in particular why I really loved this book and I had such a good time with it is that there are a few books, a few like reads that I have in the year that really make me feel something. Like, and I don't like frequently when I'm reading, I'll feel something while I'm reading, but this one really and truly made me at one point question just how fucked up I am in the head, and not like a super negative way, just kind of in a like, oh, okay, if that's the thing that bothers everyone, and I genuinely didn't notice. then what is wrong with me? There is, I had heard people discuss this book and talk about like the scene with the eyeballs or the eyeball, and I got to the first one because again, I know I had watched the video of Books and Lala reading this before I read this, and I can't remember if this is the thing that inspired me to pick it up or not, but she talked about like the discussion around like the eyeballs, and like there was one scene but she hadn't actually gotten to that, but then like later on it was like, oh my god, I actually hadn't gotten to that scene but I thought I did. And so I wasn't totally ill prepared for what was going to happen in it. And the first eyeball scene really did kind of make me like pause and be like, okay, that's pretty intense. That's a little gross. That's nasty. But I continued reading, and I was in the last, I don't know, 4 or 5%, and I was like, this is not happening. When's the thing that really freaks everyone out? When is the thing that freaks everyone out? So I paused and Googled what had caused so many people to talk about this, and then I realized it was this thing that had happened in the book that I didn't bat an eyelash at, and I just went, and I had just kind of been like, okay, yeah, that makes sense for what's happening in this. And a bunch of other people did not find that so easy to dismiss as a thing. And I was like, huh, maybe I'm a little weird. Maybe I'm a little wrong in the head. So moving on to my best books of the month. Probably come as no surprise to anyone who has read or heard of them for this first one. And that is going to be 10 Minutes and 38 Seconds in the Strange World. This is a literary fiction. This is another one that's a little hard to necessarily pin down to a particular genre. But this is a literary, it's literary, it has a mystery element to it. It's about generational family trauma, about overcoming an oppressive environment and your own traumas to build your life. There's a lot to this book. This is, I think, one of those books that I could easily recommend to basically anybody who was looking for a recommendation, unless there was like an oddly specific recommendation you're looking for. Like if you're looking for like pirate smut, this isn't it. But if you're just looking for like, oh, I just want a really good book, bam, this one. If you're looking for like something with a little bit of mystery to it, bam, like all these kinds of things. And this is following Layla, a young woman who has left her home and I believe is living in Istanbul at the time. And she is a sex worker and she is murdered. And the 10 minutes and 38 seconds is the amount of time that her brain is still active after her death. And it is her reflecting on her life. And you get to peek into the things that led her here, that have made her who she is, and really get to see all the, like, just the difficulties and the struggle in trying to have your own life while also, just doing your best to exist. And I absolutely loved this. There's this whole portion at the end that I thought was just absolutely so beautiful because, oh, how do I talk about this without spoiling anything? I think this is the thing I love the most about this book, and I promise it's gonna go back into the thing I interrupted myself for. Or I interrupted myself on, but I think that this book is so beautiful because it really shows you like how like we can look back on our lives and it can be filled with the pain and the degradation and the hurt and just all of the things that have really just been bad but made us who we are. And it can be, and whenever you're thinking back on certain things about yourself, it's hard, right, to not focus on those things, even if you don't think about them negatively or they don't have, like, even if you have moved past them, it's really hard sometimes to think about the other things and the happiness and the joy in your life. And there's this whole section at the end that shows that portion of Layla's life and shows the abundance of love that she experienced. And if you're looking for a found family book, this is also that. And it was just incredible. I cried at the end, and I just thought it was so good, so beautiful, and I absolutely adored it. That's all I gotta say. And the last book, no. And my favorite nonfiction of the month I'm going to give to the only nonfiction I read this month, which is A Map is Not the Only Story. A Map is Only One Story. This is a collection of essays from people who have immigrated, and honestly, it was really beautiful. I don't know all the things to say about this one that can really just convey how incredible this is. There was a book I read last year that I can't remember the name of immediately. I took tag off this, good. That I would almost want to pair these two together, like in a recommendation. Like, you know, it's, if you're gonna read one, I think both are equally valuable. And it's, all of the stories in here were really beautiful. I didn't give this one a rating because this is another, well, I say another, I don't think that video's even come out yet where I've talked about that. Maybe? I don't remember. Yes, it is. There's a chaos wrap up. Doesn't matter. I didn't give this book a rating because I honestly felt that like my feelings sort of transcended ratings as far as this one is concerned. I think that it was beautiful and it was incredible and it was so heartfelt and it was so personal, all the stories. Obviously, they were these people's lives that they were sharing and sharing what it meant for them and for their families. And it was really beautiful. It was really touching. And if you can get your hands on the audiobook, that is how I recommend listening to this one. Really quickly, while I'm wrapping this up, I'm gonna do something I haven't done in a while, which is talk about my favorite cover of a book that I read this month. And I am going to really quickly doing all this kind of looking at stuff. We're just gonna quickly talk about like some of my favorite covers because I got a little bit more wrapping to do. And Lapvona, I've already talked about, I think has a very engaging and interesting cover that I absolutely adored. Absolution by Jeff Vandermeer. That's another one that I could probably spend like a lot of time talking about just the book itself. Also, the cover is really interesting. It matches not my covers of the Southern Reach trilogy, but this particular printing of them that I think is really cool and really interesting. And if I was the kind of person who spent money on more than one edition of a book, this would be it because I love those covers. But Absolution is my absolute favorite, especially like once you get into it and you know you read the story, it really pairs well with it. As well as, honestly, I hated the book, but Flowers of Mold, I really enjoy that cover. I think it's so pretty and interesting, like the actual flowers on there and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, y'all ever just like troll people by putting like a tag as big as the thing on it? That's what I did. Okay, thank you for hanging out with me while I did this and while I got a different chore done. I hope you were having a wonderful time and I will see you next Friday, hopefully a little less overwhelmed with my own expectations than I am right now. See you. Bye, pals.